Hey Denise, imagine changing the world, really changing the world with a doco.
Yeah, be nice.
Thanks for your enthusiasm. Well, Damon Gameau really has.
Damon Gameau, he's a sugar man. Oh, now you're talking.
Enjoy this. Welcome to Running Free Skills. Today we are talking about social impact films, what they are, how they're different from a normal film, and how to make one. And to guide us through this new genre of filmmaking, we thought we'd get no one important. I mean, just the director of two of the most globally successful social impact films, like no biggie. Damon, welcome to Running Free Skills. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for joining us.
My pleasure.
Now, for those of us who aren't familiar with your work, we're going to be talking about your two major feature docs, That Sugar Film and 2040. Can you just give us kind of the logline or the short pitch for both films so that people get an idea of kind of the theme and the aims of the films?
Sure. So the Sugar Film was obviously focused on the food industry, and I did an experiment on my body where I ate about 40 teaspoons of sugar a day, which is what the average teenager eats each day, but without eating any obvious sugars like chocolate or ice cream or soft drinks. All the sugar I ate had to be hidden in so-called healthy foods, so low-fat yogurts and muesli bars and cereals. And I developed all the metabolic symptoms that most people are dealing with these days, the type 2 diabetes, the fatty liver, put on about 11 kilos. So just documented that journey, but used all the aesthetics and the fun of sugar to make it a bit of an enjoyable ride.
Sugar is now found in 80% of the foods we eat, but with the constant confusion over its effects on our health, and with this little person on the way, I feel like I need some definitive answers.
The point is to test out a very high sugar diet.
How are you going to do that?
If you want to match averages, 40 teaspoons of sugar a day.
40 a day. But they must be hidden sugars, found in commonly perceived healthy foods and drinks. So no soft drink, confectionery or ice cream.
People on this planet are growing sicker every day. And many scientists now believe that fructose has a role to play.
I'm eating the same amount of calories as I did before, and I'm not feeling full.
These calories do dramatically different things in the human body.
If I kept going for these levels, would I be knocking on the door of obesity?
Definitely. You haven't got far to go.
Any sugar, brown sugar, white sugar, fruit juice concentrate from fruit juice, equal effect on your health.
Not feeling very well at all today. My fuse is a lot shorter.
Your mental function is just unstable.
You've got the signs of a fatty liver. This is the first time I've seen that it can be developed in 2 or 3 weeks.
Whenever you walk into a supermarket, make an immediate turn for the produce aisle and avoid everything in the middle.
Sugar's not evil, but life is so much better when you get rid of it.
Then 2040 was ostensibly a letter to my daughter, who was 4, she's 6 now, showing her what the world could look like in 2040 if we put into practice all the best solutions that are available to us across energy, agriculture, oceans, sustainability, transport. Just tried to do a positive version of the future, very much grounded in reality. So I called it an exercise in fact-based dreaming.
My name is Damon, and this is my daughter, Velvet. Her major concern right now is the elusive art of sleep direction. But soon, she'll have to face a rapidly deteriorating environment.
The ice sheet is now melting faster than the scientists predicted.
I think there's room for a different story, a story that focuses on the solutions to some of these problems. So in 2040, what will the world look like for our daughter if we just embrace the best that already exists?
Instead of having governments that are reacting to disaster, we need governments and businesses that actually take us off in a different direction.
Maybe it's farming, or it can be energy, it can be housing, or empowering girls.
I'd like to see deforestation being stopped.
Oh, that would be so cool. That'd be awesome. Just be respectful to Earth.
Imagine Velvet. We adopted regenerative practices like phrases, pulling the carbon into the soil and making it healthier.
That's right, yeah.
And we embrace efficient local energy.
Bangladesh has 5 million solar home systems. They have that power in their own hands. This is bringing people together.
But here I am sitting on an aeroplane that is spewing out carbon. You can't help but be a hypocrite because our entire system is built on fossil fuels.
What were you guys thinking?
Well, sometimes we weren't.
The power of innovation, imagination, creativity is within all people.
People want to be working on something that they can see is actually helping to regenerate the world.
Everywhere you look, you will see incredible reasons for hope.
You could feed 10 billion people with the protein from marine permaculture alone.
Wow. Not only are there so many people who want to take part in telling a new story, we have everything we need right now to make it happen. What's your 2040?
I just want the future to be good.
So first of all, Damon, what is a social impact film and how does it differ from an issue documentary?
I guess from my experience, I love documentaries and often would feel a pretty strong emotion after the good ones, whether that was anger and frustration or inspiration. And as many people can attest, that often you don't get to do anything with that particular emotion. You quickly sort of get pulled back into the system and you're on your phone again on social media and that all dissipates. So I thought it was really important that for both films that people had very clear entry points to take action and get involved. And so I guess what a social impact documentary is saying that the film becomes a small part of a much larger ecosystem that gets built around the film that gives people resources and entry points for them to actually take direct action and get involved in, whether it's 2040, bringing to life some of the solutions they've seen in the film, or in the case of sugar, resources that help them to actually count teaspoons of sugar in products, like an app or a recipe book that just allows them to continue on their journey and embed some of the learnings that they receive from the film. So this is what you were alluding to before, is starting to take off around the world now. I think a lot of people are realising that it's not enough just to have passive content. We've got to have active content that allows people to get involved if they really do connect and are passionate about something they've just watched.
Absolutely. I think most of us have watched documentaries where we've come out and felt so moved by what we've seen and then not known what to do with that. Now, with both your films, which came first, your passion for the issue or your idea for a film?
Sugar was the first film I ever made, so it was sort of, I remember at the time seeing in the media some really conflicting stories about sugar. I thought, gee, if it's confusing for people to know exactly what's going on. So I thought I'd like to do an experiment, but I just love the idea of how the colours and the richness of the palette that you could use if you did tell a story about sugar. It sort of lends itself to very poppy, bright images and sort of this Willy Wonka kind of madness. So I thought that would be fun. And then I guess I had a lot of learnings from that and seeing what impact a film can do, not only the box office, but really the school curriculums. We had policy changes from the film. We did screenings with Jamie Oliver for the UK Parliament, and they introduced a sugary drinks tax. We did screenings at the New Zealand Parliament. They sort of banned sugary drinks in their hospitals. So I just thought, wow, this is quite extraordinary to see the power of film, really, and cinema and documentary. So I then just, I guess, I'd always had an interest in environmental issues and especially around climate, and thought we're not probably telling that story as well as we could. Is there other ways or entry points, again, for people to get engaged with this topic? Because it was just a fearful narrative we were using. And I just wanted to, again, like with sugar, use aspirational tones and say, look, you know, you can make a film saying how poisonous and bad sugar is, but that switches people off. I wanted to show how life could be better if you had less of it in your diet. And it's the same with the environment. What would it look like on the other side of this crisis if we did it properly? So actually bring people and motivate them through excitement and positive stories, as opposed to saying constantly how bad things are. So really 2040 came about because of the experience I had with sugar, and I just wanted to do that at a much larger level.
Okay. So I've now got my issue that I'm passionate about. I want to really communicate this. I want to make a change in the world. How do I decide who my audience is, and how important is my audience in the creative process?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think it's really important. I think a lot of filmmakers forego it sometimes, and it's easy to sort of go, well, I'm just going to make the film I want to make, and I want to get into a couple of festivals, and then I might get an opportunity off the back of that. And sure, that's one avenue, but I think with documentaries, and especially social impact ones, you want as many people as possible to see it if you want to make an impact. So I certainly had to go through the foregoing of ego a few times just to sort of embrace the more daggy elements of my personality, because I did want this to be, both films to be very accessible for the whole family, that, especially with 2040, to motivate the children that were feeling really hopeless about the future. So that made me sort of shape the narrative and some of the story devices in a way that I wouldn't have if I was aiming at an older audience. And I wanted them to be very family friendly and inclusive. So I think that's why they've had the broad success that they've had, that I didn't want to just play those films to a very narrow documentary audience or a festival circuit around the world. So I think you have to be very aware of that, and constantly in the edit, I was always thinking, what's too much information? Do we need some entertainment here? Where's the heart? Is there too much data here? That sort of fine balance as you're going along, to always just consider where the audience is on your journey and thinking, right, if we've just bombarded them with a lot of information that's quite new there, okay, we need to ease back here, have some nice images, some music, or a bit of a laugh before we begin the next phase of information. So I think it is a craft that you learn as you go along, but I don't think enough people think of that. And I think it's really crucial, because ultimately you want an audience to watch your film, I think, and then if they like it, they'll tell their friends. And so that's how you can begin to spread and get more people to see your film.
It's that kind of, that spread, I think, really does come from engaging people in your films. And one thing I've noticed is that you make beautiful films. Like, they're visually rich, they're really interesting. How much do you think about that visual role in terms of the audience and the message, and your kind of what's really important to you? I guess what I'm asking is it story or visuals that is more important in a social impact?
I think story always wins. Like, we're seeing that now. Some, great films even being shot on iPhones, or the story matters, and you can never forget that. But what I like to do is then just take the story into somewhere else, something a bit magical or a bit different. If you're going to get people to the cinema, I think these days there's so much content that you have to think of how does your story stand out. And I like playing with that. I like playing with what cinema offers, or especially what VFX offer us these days, that we're able to pretty much build and create anything we want. So especially in that documentary format, I think we probably got stuck in a rut of documentaries feeling reverent, and they have to be earnest, and they have to have interviews with academics in front of dusty bookshelves. And I think that's not necessary. Like, there's no reason why we can't change up the form, and you might get a bit of pushback from the purists, and that's fine. There'll be the craftsmen of documentaries that might have some issues with that, and that's okay. But I think we're in an era where we are competing with so much information. So what is it about your particular storytelling or device that is unique, that just might make it pop out and get seen by a different group of people? So yeah, I love that. That's the best part for me is writing a story, making sure that feels strong and it's going to connect at a heart level, and then thinking, right, how can we sprinkle some dust on this to take it somewhere different and give people a unique experience?
Now, can you tell me about the role of your partners in your film? How do you choose them? When do you get them involved? Why do you need them?
Yeah, so both films have been quite unique. Sugar Film, I've got all the funding independently to begin with. We had some Screen Australia help, but a lot of it was from private donors, doctors, the liver doctors, all sorts. I did full door knocking experience. And then we joined up with an organisation called Good Pitch, which then put us in touch with various partners and organisations that would be able to use the film to actually further their own causes. So whether that was a health insurance company or other health bodies or obesity coalition. So they had lots of different screenings where they'd use the film as a bit of a lightning rod. And then with 2040, it was quite different because we partnered with Good Pitch at the very beginning before I'd even filmed anything. So we aligned with a variety of different organisations that knew what we were trying to do. There's about 50 in total. And we were building the impact campaign as we went along, so that we knew once people had seen the film, right, this particular organisation offered a really great way for people to take action and say, you know, help their school to become more environmentally friendly. So great, we partnered with them right from the beginning. So there was this lovely relationship. We were using their database and their knowledge set to inform the storytelling to make sure it was accurate and robust. But also when it came to releasing the film, you've suddenly got all these partners that really want the film to do well, and they want their networks to see it as well. So suddenly it just starts to spread the way your film can be seen. Instead of just going through a traditional cinema release and crossing your fingers and hoping that everyone comes along and sees it on the first weekend, which, as we know, can be really brutal. How do you think of it in a slightly different way so that you've got all these people almost promoting your film, but it's because it's aligned with their values? And then we also changed it up in the sense that we didn't want to just do a traditional release. We really wanted to give people a community town hall experience, so that with the Sugar film, for example, and 2040, we did a bit of a roadshow tour of the country for almost a month, where we had experts on stage with me. We'd watch the film, we'd have a really short sort of 40-minute Q&A, and then invite discussion from the audience. And they were just really wonderful, because I think so many of us watch films on our own now, or just with a partner. But cinema can be this beautiful shared experience, and to also talk about social issues in a large group of people. You know, we had mums standing up irate at the food industry. What can we do about this? You have people environmentally concerned saying, right, great, kids asking questions about their future. It just gives us an opportunity to come together in ways that we don't get to do enough of in this system that we've designed.
It's also, it sounds like it's a real change in thinking for a documentary maker or a filmmaker, to rather than going, what I care about is how many people see it on that opening weekend, to how do I actually reach a really large audience and make them engage with it?
Yeah, that's right. And that's tricky to get around, and you need the right distributor who's going to understand that too, because, you know, 2040 is a great example, is that, you know, the box office was always important, but you know, I knew that this was a longer play, and you know, our metrics now are that, you know, we've had about 950,000 students have seen the film, you know, so that's better than you could ever hope at the box office. And there's a continued spread of government organisations and energy companies and banks, not just here but right around the world, that are using the film. You know, so that's not an obvious metric from the box office, but it's having the impact that you want. So in many ways, that's, you know, the box office is important to get the word of mouth out and get people excited about the film, but it's the work you do behind the scenes to spread the impact of the film, which is why it's a unique model.
Now, funding is always a big question. Do you separate the funding of the documentary from the funding of the impact strategy?
Yeah, they're completely two different sources. So we had, there was a little bit of crossover because we were lucky enough to pitch the film at Good Pitch. Some of the people there that really loved the idea of the film, that wanted to give money philanthropically as a donation, also wanted to sort of help fund the film. So we raised the money to fund the film very, very, very quickly. But yes, that sits separately, and that's tricky sometimes because the film's done well. People think, well, hang on, why are you asking for money? Didn't the film do really well? But of course, as we know, the filmmaker, you know, there's a big pot that gets divided with your film, and the cinemas take about 70% of the box office, and then everyone who's distributing it, and then the publicity. And so really, you know, there's not a lot of money to be made there. So we've had to raise that money philanthropically with a 2040 outreach separate vehicle, which is a not-for-profit that we run just on donation. So we're trying to think about how we can keep going, because that's obviously, you can't keep going back and asking for money, but what's the ethical or the right way that we can keep the momentum of what we've generated and actually make sure it's sustainable.
Basically, you've built two companies rather than just made a couple of films, haven't you?
Yeah, it is. I say that sometimes, and it is I mean, not just me, we've got a beautiful team of people that are around that, but it's tricky sometimes, and I've got to make sure that, because sometimes you can feel like you're, you know, running a company, and so that's a different part of your brain. You know, for me, it's very much the left brain, and sometimes I need to sort of switch that off and turn the emails off and actually do the dreaming in the creative space, because it can get very hard to do the creating thinking when you're in that admin mode. So especially as I'm sort of developing some new projects are on the go at the moment, I've just got to really allocate time in my day to make sure I turn everything off, don't get pulled into that stuff, and actually let myself think of the creative things and the story I want to tell.
It's a really tricky balance, isn't it?
Nightmare.
Now,
then there's an 8-month-old who won't sleep, and a 6-year-old that needs homeschooling. So it's game on at the moment.
it's good to be challenged.
Yeah.
Now, your impact strategy. If I'm making a film, I want to make a social impact documentary. What is an impact strategy? Do I need one? Does it evolve? And do I need an impact producer?
100%, I would say yes to an impact producer. I've been very fortunate that a lady named Anna Kaplan has done Sugar and 2040, and she's just an extraordinary worker in that sense and does a great job. And really what that impact producer does is coordinate a lot of the relationships behind the scenes, reaching out to various organisations that might feel the film can be useful for them, dealing with all the schools, government bodies. It's just to try and do that as a director and producer as well. Obviously you've got to be across some of it, but you really do need the help there. And I'd say to have that strategy is really important so that you know who are the partners that are going to align with your topic. So whether it's about mental health or domestic violence or the environment, there'll be organisations out there that you can already start to accumulate and think, right, they might be really interested in this story. Can we reach out initially and just get some contact going? But then, especially when it comes to release, how can they help it? What kind of nights can they put on? How can they use their own database and network to tell people about your film? But I also say to be really aware of reaching out to unlikely partners, which we did with 2040. Is like, let's not just stick to the known environmental groups, but think, okay, if we've told this story in a way that isn't polarising, it isn't a ranty lefty film, it's actually trying to ride that middle line. Why wouldn't we reach out to some of the bigger banks or some of these other organisations that are going to have to change eventually anyway? Can we get in the room there, have a screening and have a really robust conversation about what they're doing? And that's sort of what's happened. Because we sort of reached out and said, look, this is about our kids' future. This is about the new technologies emerging, what the future might look like. They are all interested in that stuff as well. So suddenly you just broaden your audience from this really niche group to really considering who might, not be an obvious choice that might actually want to use your film in some way.
It's amazing. It's such a different way of thinking about film production. Now, what's the life cycle of a social impact film? Are you still working on that Sugar film?
Yeah, look, this is a tricky thing. And obviously some of the learnings is that I probably, with Sugar, that it got to a point where obviously we'd run out of our philanthropic funding. We had all this momentum and we really were in a bit of a pickle because we had to basically stop because we didn't have the funding. So someone else came on and sort of said, look, I'd like to keep this going. We'd like to sort of charge some money to do a bit of a plan to people. And it was a really tricky one for me because we'd done 2 years without having to, we're just giving all this information away for free. So I think it was a bit challenging for people at first. They suddenly thought, hang on, we've been given free recipes all this time. Why are you suddenly charging? But I'd also got to a point, which is a good lesson for people, that I'd sort of burnt out, that I hadn't looked after myself properly and had the infrastructure in place because it was also new. But I just got to a point where I couldn't even talk about Sugar anymore. I couldn't even talk about, I'd done my dash. And it wasn't really a topic I ever was that passionate about anyway. I enjoyed it, but it was a bit of a surprise how well it did. So I really set up a few different things with 2040 and made sure that it's more of a collaboration, there's more of a structure so that we don't burn ourselves out. But again, trying to look at ways that how do we, it'd be such a shame to just grind to a halt because we've lost our money. So we're just trying to look at different ways of bringing in some revenue, certain partnerships with aligned organisations. And I think as long as we're very transparent, that a lot of people won't mind that because we want to keep this going. And they know that we're actually creating some good. So, we've got to be able to maintain ourselves.
It's been so interesting talking to you and getting a kind of download of your brain. We've got about 2 minutes. So just tell me, how do you measure, do you think of 2040 and that Sugar film as a success? And how do you measure your own success?
I think the measurements, we've got some really beautiful metrics now around the impact. So we're trying to sort of make them more transparent, but we try and update regularly. But we get reporting back from all the organisations we've aligned with. We can see how our community has engaged with them. So whether that is, the 21,000 teachers that have downloaded the curriculum materials, which equates to that amount of students. Whether it's this seaweed project, which we've now raised almost $700,000. It's the same with the farmers. We can see how many people are mentoring young girls online. We can see Ecosia, which is a search engine where people plant their trees. That's almost 20,000 trees now. So we've got all these great, points of data that come back to us. And, I do feel incredibly proud of that, to say that we have, there's a lot of work to do and there's a big job. But I feel that our community has been really wonderful engaging in this and using a hopeful message as inspiration. And that makes me want to keep going, and it makes me want to make this even bigger, tell more stories, get more and more people on board. Because I think, and for our community, for them to see that they're making a difference is really important as well, that this isn't just a film. This is sort of a bit of a movement that they can feel proud about and get excited about for their children.
Yeah. I think you should feel huge. If I was you, I would feel hugely proud of what you've achieved, and I hope that you look at the films in 10 years and like, that was brilliant. I really started something. I really started changing the way people think.
Thanks. Now, yeah, I'm probably not. That my wife would say that too, and I think one of my flaws is I am a bit of a perfectionist, and I don't stop enough and reflect. I sort of, you're your father of two. There's so much work to do, and there's so many things that I get concerned about in the world, but I want to keep going. But it is important sometimes to take stock, and I could probably do that more. So I'm going to take that in, and thank you very much.
Now, final question. If people are inspired to make their own social impact film and change the world, where can they find out more? Who can they go and talk to about this?
Yeah, so unfortunately, Good Pitch isn't running anymore, which is a great shame. They did an extraordinary job in what they did in this country. I think they worked with about 20 films in the end and had a huge impact there. There's a group, I'm just trying to think of their name, that it's a similar model where if you've got an idea, you can go in, and they do it once a quarter, and you can pitch to a room of about 200 philanthropists. And if they like your idea, people will donate some money and help you get going. I think, I can't remember the name off the top of my head, but I can send you information.
That's totally fine, and we will put it in the comment section below.
Yeah, the Funding Network. There you go, the Funding Network. And
Perfect.
So that's one. Obviously, DAF as well, Documentary Australia Foundation. They've got a terrific website, and they're very helpful there. If you have some questions, they'll get back to you pretty quickly. And in fact, I think we're doing there's an upcoming seminar with them about this topic as well, on environmental issues and how to make a difference. That's through DAF. So yeah, this is starting to emerge. There's a lot of people starting to do this. There's a few, Anna, who I work with, is looking at setting up something as well, like a mentorship that she can start training up people to be impact producers, because people are looking for them now, but it is a very specific skill set. But we're very lucky in Australia that we have some really wonderful impact producers.
Excellent. Thank you so much. I really appreciate your time today. I reckon we went a couple of minutes over, but I'm going to say it was worth it for us at any rate.
Yeah. Thanks, Esther. Appreciate it.
Thanks so much, Damon. Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye.
And for more information, you can check out the links down below. You can join the conversation, #RunningFreeSkills. Keep watching all the fantastic sessions that we've got on the ACMI YouTube channel, and we will see you again soon. Thanks so much. Bye-bye.